From our Toronto studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Zahra Syed. Our top story tonight. A recent United Nations-backed report reveals a dire humanitarian crisis unfolding in Gaza. All 2.3 million Palestinians face severe hunger, escalating the risk of famine each day. The situation is detailed in a joint report released Thursday by 23 United Nations and non-governmental organizations. It highlights that 576,600 people in Gaza are at a catastrophic levels of food insecurity, nearing starvation. It is the most extensive acute food insecurity ever recorded globally amongst the households in Gaza, according to the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Report. Human Rights Watch has accused Israel of deliberately depriving Palestinians of basic necessities, including food and water. The group labeled it a war crime and urged global leaders to intervene. Jewish-American writer Masha Gessen has likened the situation in Gaza to the Nazi German ghettos, drawing attention and backlash. The Palestinian Ministry of Health reports Israeli airstrikes have left a staggering 390 Palestinians dead and 734 injured in just 48 hours. Israeli forces have targeted multiple areas overnight, including Nuseirat, Deir al-Balah, Khan Yunis, and Rafah, resulting in widespread destruction and loss of life. In one incident, 16 members of the al-Bursh family were killed when their home in Jabalia was struck. And in another, Director General of the Ministry of Health Munir al-Bursh was critically injured when his sister's house was hit. His daughter was amongst the casualties. A New York Times investigation has revealed Israel used powerful 2,000-pound bombs in areas designated as safe for civilians during the first 6 weeks of the war. Since October 7th, Israeli strikes have killed 20,000 Palestinians, with an additional 8,000 people still trapped in bombed-out structures. The administration of President Joe Biden is reportedly working to dissuade Switzerland from hosting a conference addressing alleged Geneva Convention violations during Israel's war on Palestine. Palestinian diplomats, along with several nations, including the United States allies, are advocating for Switzerland to convene the conference. More than 60 countries, including Norway, have signed a letter in support. The State Department aims to convince Switzerland to reject this call, asserting it could politicize the Geneva Conventions primarily targeting Israel. The U.S. itself has been accused of violating the Geneva Conventions by supplying arms to Israel during the war on Palestine. Human rights advocates are concerned about the U.S. pressure campaign, given the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. Critics argue the U.S. should focus on urging Israel to comply with its Geneva Convention obligations rather than shielding it from criticism. Historically, neutral Switzerland is the depository of the conventions. It determines when meetings of the parties involved are held to discuss compliance. Louis Charbonneau, UN Director at Human Rights Watch, says the U.S. should spend less time trying to protect Israel from justified criticism and more time urging it to start complying with its obligations. An Egyptian American has been assaulted for carrying a Palestinian flag. Mahmoud al-Shazli says if he had carried an Israeli flag, he might have received applause and support instead. He emphasized this incident reflects bias and prejudice. Al-Shazli, who was born and raised in Texas, recounted how a man confronted him at a skiing center demanding he remove the Palestinian flag. When he refused, he was physically attacked. Al-Shazli says his ethnicity also played a role in the assault. He reported the incident to the police and the attacker has been identified. Al-Shazli intends to seek justice in court. This incident is part of a broader concern about rising prejudice and aggression against Muslims in the U.S. The Palestine Health Ministry has accused Israel of extracting confessions from the director of Gamal Adwan Hospital under duress. The Israeli army posted a video of Ahmed al-Kahlout telling investigators Hamas had used the facility as a base for its operations. The ministry called on human rights groups to denounce Israel's criminal behavior against Palestinians and healthcare crews, to extract a narrative consistent with the occupation's demand. Israeli army forces raided the Gamal Adwan hospital in the northern city of Beit Lahia on December 12th and detained 90 people, including Kahlout, before withdrawing. Artists worldwide are uniting to demand the release of theater members from the Freedom Theater in the West Bank. The theater, known for its original plays and creative workshops for Palestinian communities, has faced immense challenges since its founding in 1987. It is owned by an Israeli-Palestinian couple. Over the years, the theater has been subjected to attacks. Its artistic director was shot in 2011, and its board chair, Bilal al-Sadi, arrested in 2022. Last summer, the Israeli military shelled the theater, causing significant damage. On December 13th, the Israeli army ransacked and vandalized the theater, arresting its artistic director Ahmad Tobasi and 2 members. Tobasi said Israeli soldiers destroyed computers, blindfolded him, and subjected him to terrifying treatment. The theater's staff reported gunfire inside and the arrest of 2 more members, one of whom was severely beaten. Global artists, including British playwrights, actors, and directors, as well as artists from France, Italy, Mexico, South Africa, Germany, and Belgium, are rallying in support. Artists in New York City also held a protest in solidarity, echoing the call for release of the detained theater artists. Global rights groups accuses Meta of suppressing pro-Palestine content. Details come after the break. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Human Rights Watch has condemned Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, for alleged censorship of content supporting Palestine. In the 51-page report, the HRW claims Meta's content moderation policies and implementation have stifled Palestinian voices. HRW reviewed more than 1,050 instances of online censorship across 60 countries. It highlights 6 common patterns, including content removal, account suspension, and limited engagement options. Meta is also accused of misapplying various policies, such as those related to violence, hate speech, and newsworthy content. Despite promises to change content moderation practices, HRW says Meta failed to fulfill its human rights responsibilities, frustrating Palestinian social media activists. Social media platforms are said to have removed numerous posts and accounts related to the conflict. According to the HRW report, there are 6 key patterns of censorship, each recurring in at least 100 instances. They are content removals, suspensions or deletions of accounts, inability to engage with content, inability to follow or tag accounts, and restrictions on the use of features. In more than 300 cases, users were unable to appeal content or account removal because the appeal mechanism had malfunctioned. A challenge to the Quran has been filed, seeking the Muslim holy book's removal from the libraries of the Davis School District in Utah. Though the challenge was filed last June, it recently gained public attention as part of a sensitive materials review request list. Notably, the Bible faced a similar challenge, but remained in school libraries. The Quran challenge cited concerns about violence and sex within the text, taking references from random, unauthoritative Wikipedia sources. The school district confirmed the review process is ongoing. This comes amid a broader effort by parents and others to review books in the Davis School District following the passage of a law in Utah. This law created guidelines for addressing sexually explicit content in books. While some works of fiction have faced challenges, the controversy surrounding the King James Version of the Bible's potential removal ignited significant debate. The Davis School Board eventually allowed the Bible to stay in the library. Challenges to the Book of Mormon and the Quran remain unresolved. The Farmington-based district aims to conclude within 30 days. The New York City Council has approved a bill that significantly restricts the use of solitary confinement in city jails. The legislation, adopted with a 39-7 vote, stipulates that inmates can be placed in solitary confinement for no more than 8 hours at night or 2 hours during the day in a 24-hour period. Only in case of violence or emergency situations can solitary confinement be extended. The bill also introduces due process considerations for placing prisoners in a restrictive housing, allowing inmates to contest removal from the general population. The City Council cited the severe psychological and emotional toll of solitary confinement, particularly on inmates of color, as a key reason for passing the law. The move follows recent controversies and lawsuits surrounding solitary confinement in the U.S., emphasizing growing concerns about its inhumane effects on prisoners. Mayor Eric Adams expressed concerns about the bill's impact on inmate and guard safety. He said it poses a threat to the Department of Corrections' ability to protect inmates and prison guards. Malim Ayman, a key leader of Al-Shabaab terror group, was killed earlier this week in an airstrike by the United States Africa Command in Somalia. Information Minister Daoud Awais posted on X that Ayman was killed December 17th in an operation by the Somali National Army with assistance from the U.S. forces. The U.S. State Department's Rewards for Justice program had offered a reward of up to $10 million for information leading to Ayman's arrest or conviction in any country. He was the mastermind of the January 5th, 2020 terrorist attack on the U.S. and Kenyan personnel at the Manda Bay airfield in Kenya's coastal region of Lamu. The U.S. said Ayman was the leader of Jaish-Ayman, an Al-Shabaab unit conducting terrorist attacks and operations in Kenya and Somalia. The State Department designated Ayman a specially designated global terrorist in November 2020. The United Nations Special Envoy for Syria has expressed deep concern about the deteriorating situation in the war-torn nation. Geir Pedersen highlighted 2023's challenges, including devastating earthquakes, soaring humanitarian needs, a plummeting economy, and worse violence in 3 years. Despite some diplomatic openings, Pedersen says there have been no tangible improvements in the lives of Syrians. Pedersen also notes the threat of regional spillover, emphasizing the escalation of tensions between Israel and Palestine. Multiple airstrikes were attributed to Israel and Syria and ongoing conflicts in the region. Lisa Doughton, director of the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, emphasized the unsustainable nature of the situation in Syria and the urgent need for progress towards peace. She also called for adequate funding to sustain humanitarian efforts. Syria has been mired in civil war since 2011. The crisis has led to hundreds of thousands of deaths and more than 10 million people displaced, according to the UN estimates. About 300,000 people are fleeing Wad Madani, Sudan's second-largest city, as conflict spreads across the region. According to the International Organization for Migration, more than 500,000 people have sought refuge in Al Jazeera state since the crisis began in April. They have been displaced again, now due to recent fighting on the city's outskirts. The IOM Director General Amy Pope called the situation an immense human tragedy, worsening Sudan's already severe humanitarian crisis. The escalating conflict underscores the urgent need for a peaceful resolution, a ceasefire, and a robust response to prevent a broader catastrophe. This exodus will push Sudan's total displaced population past 7.1 million, making it the world's largest displacement crisis. More than 1.5 million people have also fled to neighboring countries due to the conflict, food insecurity, and economic collapse. Despite multiple failed ceasefire agreements, fighting between the army and the paramilitary forces continues to plague Sudan. That's all from our Toronto studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon for the latest updates. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.